welcome to this week's edition of the Port Haven Book Club reading of Star Wars Aftermath Life Debt. If you are new to the series, please click on this playlist and it'll take you back to the beginning, where basically we've been going through this book a couple of chapters at a time, getting into the nitty-gritty, and before that we were actually going through the first Aftermath book. If you want to click on this playlist, and it will take you all the way back to the series if you want to join us from there. Or, if you've been reading along or you just want to start from here, we'll go ahead and dive right in. We are reading the last two things before we get to the end of Part 2 into the beginning of Part 3. One of those things has been one of the things I've been most excited to talk about, which is the fifth interlude of this book, which takes place on Takodana, which of course means it takes place at Maz's castle. This is a really fun look because Maz is such an interesting character. She really was the first character we'd seen in the films that had some kind of sensitivity to the Force that wasn't one of the major Force practitioners. Of course, since then we've gotten Chirrut Imwe, and of course in Star Wars The Clone Wars and Rebels we've seen more characters like this, but really in terms of on-screen, she was the first, and so to get to know a little bit more about her is pretty fantastic. I really liked right off the bat they go over the rules of Maz's castle and how there's many unspoken ones. Two of the ones I thought were most interesting were you don't go downstairs and you don't ask about Maz's eyes, which of course were direct references to The Force Awakens. But there's really only one spoken rule, and that is that all are welcome, no fighting. Which kind of makes me think of the Maz Eisley's cantina where there was no blasters, no blasters. Basically, it's a story about how tense it is to welcome everybody, but also to have no fighting, because obviously, especially when the galaxy is in a state of civil war, you're going to have times where it's difficult, because you're going to have people who are polar opposites who just don't want to be in the same place. This story follows an Imperial who is having a hard time sharing space with a rebel. Now, what I appreciate about this story is he's not just that Imperial that hates all rebels. As we so often see in Aftermath, no one is just black or white in these books, and this is an Imperial who worked for the ISB, Imperial Security Bureau, so he was an intelligence officer, so he was probably never really in the field, he was probably just like in an office somewhere, and his family got wiped out by a bombing by the rebellion. So he's got this beef with the rebellion because the rebellion was going around parading themselves as being this morally superior group, and then in his mind they just kind of cowardly or killed his family in this cowardly way. It actually made me think a lot, if any of you guys are MCU fans, the plot from Civil War, where you had Zemo, who lost his family as a result of Age of Ultron, basically. It was a very kind of similar story to that. I think it's one that really fits with the themes of the book, because it's this idea of, you know, the rebels really do go around saying that they're better than the Empire, and they fight, in better ways than the Empire, and they care more than the Empire, but war is war. Sometimes there's collateral damage, and sometimes innocents die, and that's why war sucks. This is a case where some of the good guys took out people that were arguably innocent. I mean, can you really blame the wife and the child of an ISB officer, especially if they didn't know any better, and it's kind of like those morally gray questions. However, rather than get all philosophical about it, the Imperial gets drunk and decides that the rebel pilot sitting across from him in the bar must be the same rebel pilot that kills his family. He walks over, they get into a scuffle, and they get taken down by Maz's like crazy droid that has like taser fingers, and they get locked up. Both of them wake up in these kind of adjacent cells down in Maz's prison area, I suppose, and Maz comes down and she wants to look in their eyes. So it's this very common theme with her where she really sees into a person by, looking into their face, and Maz looks at the Imperial and basically says, like, yo, it sucks because the rebellion caused you a lot of pain, but the Empire caused a lot of other people pain, so the scales of your life are balanced, so why don't you just get out of here and leave people alone? He does. I think there's something kind of intimidating about Maz Kanata in the best possible way, and whether or not he really learned his lesson, I suppose is hard to say, but I think the encounter will stay with him. But the other thing that Maz says before she lets him go is that the Empire is dead. There's some out there who think that the Empire can be reborn. There's some out there who think it's just dying, but it isn't dead yet. And she's like, no, the Empire is dead. It's a carcass. It's gone. Anything else that's going on is just new life popping up from a carcass, like a bunch of fungi, that all this other stuff will come out. And yeah, that can mean the New Republic, but I think it can also mean the First Order too. I think Maz is a little bit far-sighted enough to know about this. So she lets him go, and then after he's off-world, she lets the pilot go so they don't fight again. She talks to her cool taser hand droid, and it's another instance of, Maz believes the droid is her own droid, which is a thing we're seeing more and more in new canon, this idea of kind of like droid rights, basically. And then Maz basically gets into a ship and flies off to like look at the galaxy because she can feel the force shifting. This was cool to me because somehow I just always imagined Maz never left Maz's castle and she was just always on Takodana, and the idea that she would still go around and fly around and look at things was cool. It makes a lot of sense for her character, but somehow it just never occurred to me. So that was just a cool thing, and that it shows how she really does care about the Force and what's going on about the Force, because she wants to go out there and see what's happening. Then we get to chapter 15, and chapter 15 is the big, this is where the plot is going chapter at the end of this section of the book. Basically, they're all kind of hanging out in the political district of Chandrila, in the New Republic's capital. Nora notes that she does not like talking about politics. Basically, she has the thought train of, my son is depressed, also I should probably tell him that I'm dating his teacher. Timon has been taking lessons from Wedge. And I'm just like, Nora, this is why you're bad at politics, because you were like, my son is depressed, I should tell him a thing that's gonna really weird him out. Granted, she's just deciding whether or not she should, but maybe you shouldn't date your son's teacher. Just saying. At some point in the chapter, Akbar and Leia walk up, and they're having this big discussion because Akbar is super mad that they're trying to look for Han Solo and that all this stuff is going on, and he's mad at Leia for doing it, and he orders them to stand down, and Nora's like, no, we're not, and I'm gonna resign my commission. And it's funny because this is like all instinctual Nora word vomit, and in her brain is going, nope, don't say any of these things. I don't think any of these things. You need to stop speaking, but she's saying them anyway. And so Nora's kind of having this big moment, swelling moment where she wants to stand up and help Leia out of respect for everything Leia and General Solo have given to the rebellion, and basically given to the galaxy at large. Which on the surface felt like kind of a weak motivation, but maybe a very Nora-like motivation, but we'll get to that in a second. But what I really appreciate is during all of these conversations, you have Bones in the background, like, catching a butterfly, and he, like, daintily catches the butterfly and then rips the wings off the butterfly, and it was just a very Bones moment that I really appreciated. Anyway, after Nora has resigned her commission and walks away and has a panic attack, she's thinking about stuff. I don't know if she really realizes it, but it made a lot of sense to me. She's basically like, I need to go out and find Han, so Leia doesn't have to go through what she went through with Brenton. And it made me realize that she's probably out looking for Han Solo because she's hurt that she can't find Brenton. That's a big part of that, and that motivation makes a lot more sense. I mean, yes, it makes sense that she would feel a debt to Leia and a debt to Han, but it makes a lot more sense that she's really just projecting her own problems. And so now Nora has kind of found herself in this point where she's always taken orders and she's always been in, this military setting, and now she kind of has to find her own way. With her are, of course, Timon and Jazz and Singer and Bones. John has decided to not turn in his commission, and so we'll see how things go with that. But that's basically where we hit the end of part 2, and we move on to part 3. Like I said, this was a big kind of emotional turning point for Nora's character as we continue on with the story, as she kind of continues to go through her bits of life crises. For next week, let's read 16, 17, and 18. This book continues to have far fewer interludes than the first one did. But yeah, we'll read 16, 17, and 18. We are moving right along in this book. I'm really excited about it. Let me know what you think about the book so far in the comments. I'm sorry the schedule's still a little bit strange. I'm going to kind of lean towards it's going to be Monday videos from now on, or at least until such times I have to change the schedule again. But please make sure you're following us on all the things. We have our Twitter account, we have our blog site, port-haven.com, we have started an Instagram, and we of course have a Discord server, and I would love to talk to you in any of those places. But that's it for now, and I will see you all next week.